Good afternoon and welcome to another Cassandra Voices interview. Taking place in the lovely surroundings of Amuri restaurant in Dublin, a recently opened Sicilian restaurant. And I'm here with a long-time resident of Ireland and a journalist, Renaissance man, Concetto La Malfa, who's going to talk a little bit about his time in Ireland and also some of the differences between Ireland and Italy, and finally what is actually happening in Italy at the moment. So, Concetto, when did you come to Ireland, or how did you come to live in Ireland?
Well, I came here in first time '64. I was a university student in Sicily, and I applied for a stage abroad. And they sent me to Aer Lingus in Dublin for 2 months stage.
I'm interested though, what was your first impression when you arrived in Ireland?
Well, I arrived in Ireland, and this is something which I have to say, that coming to Ireland, I took the opportunity of writing my graduation thesis in economics, in economic geography, on Ireland. So when I arrived here, however, it was depressing. To me it was depressing, because I was coming from the city of Catania in Sicily, where life starts at midnight, literally. It did then and it does now. So you can imagine, at the time when there were only 5 Italian restaurants in Dublin, 5. 4 of them run by 4 brothers, I remember very well. Pubs were plenty. There were plenty of them, you know. But in any case...
So did you struggle with the requirement to have to drink beer as opposed to
I
enjoy
struggled with
food?
the requirement of socializing the way the Irish socialize. In other words, drinking a lot, which was never my scene. But no, I mean, I struggled with the food during my 2-month stage, because I remember, I made acquaintance with a bistro not far from where I was staying, which was near Sicilian Square in Dublin. And this bistro had a very limited menu with prawn cocktails, steak, salmon and cod, and bacon and cabbage. So I tried bacon and cabbage, I liked it. Coming here, it was a bit of it was a poor capital in a poor country, really, when you think of it, without any offense.
Sure. I suppose those were the La Mas years, where
exactly.
looking back, there was a lot of...
The first 5-year plan.
First 5-year plan, sort of a kind of the beginning of sort of a globalized economy, foreign multinationals beginning to come into the country. So it was probably, under the surface, quite a dynamic place that was changing quite rapidly. So you must have seen, for example, the Italian community must have changed quite a lot in that period.
In hindsight, having lived for 57 years now in Dublin, that was the beginning. And I believe that plan was the very first really serious political attempt to change Ireland economically. Ireland moving from a very poor country to a country which eventually became the lighthouse of economic growth in Europe, with all its faults and all its virtues.
You're very politically aware, Concetto. You're not causing offence there now.
Continuous evolution. We start from the population. When I arrived here was 600,000. Now Dublin counts possibly 1.5 million people, which makes this country like a dwarf with a giant's heart, because nearly 40% of the whole population is in the city, and that is not good, because it is pressure on the government, it's pressure on the services, and all these things, social welfare and alone. And then we have the additional problem which many countries in Europe have, the influx of refugees, which Ireland is not.
It's not handling very well.
It's not handling very well. So in any case, it is a country, but primarily a capital city, that it is grown in a hurry, in a way. The system is under pressure, first of all, within the framework of what I always defined a capitalistic society in any case, okay? Because the little people, they have to be reminded that there are the little people to look at. In any case, is Dublin a modern capital? There was a very interesting editorial about Fintan in the Irish Times, which was within diplomacy, I suppose, diplomatic way. He was saying something which, all this development, is it real development? Because there is something wrong somewhere, because things seems to be done in a hurry, seems to be done with approximation, and there are many things which should work better which aren't. And what could it be? I mean, anybody could be, from the state of the streets with all the potholes, etc., which could be fixed. And primarily, to me, the major problem is how they handle young delinquency in this country and in this capital, because there is too much tolerance, in my opinion, from the police.
Do you feel unsafe?
Well, I mean, I've been risking my life, so I feel unsafe. Once there was a guy, a bunch of hooligans who, from a derelict building, took an aim at me with a very powerful air gun, and 2 pellets were sent to me. One missed my temple by that much, and then the other was shot at the car. So, I mean, what more? And then when you travel along the footpath near Stephen's Green, around Stephen's Green, with all the bicycle that they have to be used the footpath, a couple of times myself and my wife have been risking to be run down. You talk to the police, they say, yes, well, we'll see about it, but I mean, nothing much is done. And the actual narrative from the police is they don't have the resources.
How does that compare to Sicily? Is Sicily today, or in recent years, is it people? It's this association with the mafia. Are the towns themselves quite safe? Ordinary street crime.
Well, look, mafia in Sicily is as visible as the IRA was to the ordinary Joe Soap here in Ireland. It's a secret organization. They don't bother you. They bother you only when you get involved and you hinder some plan that they have, or you do not comply with certain rules. But it is an organization which is a code of honor, really. They're not in your face.
And would you say that the mafia have hindered the development of Sicily, or have held back the development?
It has slowed down a lot, because it's the contracts, appropriating contracts to build, appropriating contracts to distribute agricultural products, etc., when they want to make money. But there is quite an interesting point, which was highlighted by the Espresso magazine many years ago. So the mafia saying to the agricultural producers, you sell all your produce to us or else. And they did. But what was the result? That they cut the middleman, and the customers, people buying, they bought at the lowest possible price. So, there is just, in every cloud there's a silver line, so to speak, right?
Honor among thieves, I think they call it.
Well, I mean, I don't want to condone them, the system, the whatever, but, there is something
Sure.
about it.
What about contemporary Italian politics? Are you despairing at the moment? The fall of the government?
Yeah, well,
the rise of the far right?
Frank, being in Ireland, being involved in the Italian setup all my life, really, I've kept a bit distant. So therefore, I've always looked at the macro. I was never interested in details, and there are plenty of details, because when Italians talk about politics in Italy, they get lost in details, losing sight of what is the actual main.
The big picture.
Big picture,
Uh-huh.
correct. So, what can I say? 67 governments in 74 years. That's Italy for you. In a way, if the government has to change at the slightest disagreement, is democracy. Yeah, but we're going too far.
Sure.
Sure.
And going back to your time in Ireland, I believe you covered some football over the years, and you also met up with a certain Giovanni Trappatoni.
Well,
is that right?
Well, in a nutshell, I was a correspondent in Dublin for Corriere dello Sport of Rome, and I was there for 23 years. Of course, Trappatoni knew me, for the simple reason that covering the international matches where Liam Brady, the Irish player, who spent quite a time in Juventus in Italy, at the time when Trappatoni was the manager, they both read my reports after a match played here where Liam Brady was playing. So, I mean, the connection is there. It was very, very, very natural.
You edited a magazine for a number of decades, I think, an Italian émigré magazine.
I founded an Italian magazine for the Italian community in '83, and I ran it until 2014, for 31 years. Then this magazine could not survive because of lack of financial support and advertising, things like that. So I diversified into an online magazine, which is still going, called italvideonewstv.net. But recently I have started doing what you would classify in French denomination téléjournal, the news, on video, with very short programs taking care of current affairs, whether in Ireland, Italy, Europe, or the world. For example, this morning was the latest about the tension which is started now between Serbia and Kosovo, which is a very dangerous situation there, on top of the Ukrainian war. So, I mean, there are 3-minute program.
Wow, so you're really up to date with modern technology, and you've really moved with the times, is that?
Yes, well, modern technology up to the point. Technical tools, very simple and not very expensive ones. I do my work through Zoom because I can record myself and then compile it in a program where I appear as the newsreader with a virtual background, which Zoom allows you to set up.
And you obviously maintain a big interest in international affairs.
Yes, yes.
And so where do you What are your news sources? Do you look at Italian news? Do you look at Irish news? Do you look at American, British?
Well, I mean, a bit of everything, you know, from Euro News to BBC, and also editorially, my scripts are based on sound editorial, which appears in English, which are transformed into Italian, taking the actual, extracting the essence.
And do you find that this latest war between Russia and Ukraine, have you found that challenging to cover in terms of finding the right information?
At the beginning, yes, of course. But after a while, I've formed my precise verdict on the thing, which is very simple. The West are conducting a war by proxy in Ukraine with the blood of the Ukrainians. Every single weapon which is sent from the West to the Ukrainians makes the possibility of a diplomatic dialogue and solution very distant, and more distant. So, I mean, if that's the way, I mean, this war will continue for a long time. I don't know who is going to stop it. It can stop him, either Putin says, I had enough, bye-bye, I'm going, which I can't see. Certainly not leaving Ukraine and say, well, listen, you can have the whole territory of Ukraine. That's impossible, absolutely impossible. Or if the Ukrainians come to some arrangement. So, in other words, because otherwise this war will continue until there is no more Ukrainians to fight the war. Because, you know, dying bit by bit. Putin has 1 million soldiers, let's not forget, available. That's the idea.
This has been a fascinating discussion, Concetto. We've covered interesting ground, including your reflections on coming into a very poor country in the 1960s and being a witness to that transformation for good and for worse. But also fascinating to learn about your continued appreciation and understanding of contemporary events. So thank you very much, Concetto.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was a pleasure.